Hello and welcome to Surviving Scientology on YouTube with your host, Jeffrey Augustine. Today's guest is Mitch Brisker, and we're going to bring Mitch on, add it to the stage. Mitch?
Sorry, Jeffrey.
Oh,
I
what?
was just reading
Wait,
my
no, no, no,
horoscope.
no, 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 no. Young man, what's that publication? No.
This?
Yeah, what?
Oh,
Come on, you're busted. What is it?
this? Oh, that's it's
The
the National
National
Enquirer.
Enquirer. Oh, I
Yeah,
saw that. There's an article about you in it.
yeah, there was. Well, it's not really about me because I'm not trying to draw
It
attention
said
to
Mitch
myself.
Brisker. No, no, no,
Yeah,
no. I read the National Enquirer and it said you are one of Scientology's top leaders.
yeah, I know they love that. I mean, they love to do that stuff. I
So,
mean, they promised me a picture of like Elvis with an alien baby, but that didn't
yeah,
work
but
out. So
I,
they called me
you
a
know,
leader, which is crazy. That is really gonna not sit well with Scientology's so-called leaders.
uh,
But yeah, but that was just, and it's in here with my favorite article, Prostitutes and Pillow Talk. That's the one that's the reason I subscribe. So yeah,
yeah,
it's a pretty classy magazine. I'm really happy to be in it.
wow. Well, congratulations.
But
Hey, I've
yeah,
got
thank you very much.
here at Surviving Scientology on YouTube, which is the channel my wife Karen started, my lovely wife Karen Della Carrier started in 2012. Security is very important here. So I have attached to make sure you're not a Mitch Brisker impersonator. Are you ready for the test?
Yes, I am.
Now, I have a book. I happen to have a book written by the real Mitch Brisker,
Okay,
Scientology, The Big Lie,
right.
uh, How I Made an Evil Cult Look Good. Okay, so that's the book,
Right.
and it's available on Amazon. Now, I have a question for you to make sure you're not a
Yeah.
impersonator. Can you tell me what you said on page 259, what it begins with?
I don't. I'd have to open the book up,
No,
but
no, 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 no. Can you tell me yes or no? It's a yes or no, Mitch.
I cannot. I cannot. 259.
Then that proves
Can you at
no,
least give me a chapter title or
no,
any? Okay.
no. The fact that you cannot remember what is on that page means that you are not a clear, and you do not have a perfect memory, which means you are the real Mitch Brisker.
Thank you very much. The
You
real
passed
got
the
all the way to
test,
operating Thetan level 5
and you
at
still
quite
can't
an
remember what's on the
expense.
page of a
No,
book you read 3
no.
lifetimes ago.
Yeah,
I remember what I had for breakfast in 1215.
really.
Yeah,
Well, everybody was eating. Yeah, but that was just what were they eating then? They were eating porridge and moldy bread. So
yeah, that
how
was
could you
it.
forget that?
Yeah, it's porridge and moldy bread. Anyway, welcome to the show. We're
Yeah.
going to
Hey,
talk
this is
today.
great.
We're going to talk today about Louis Farrakhan, and you want to jump right into it?
Okay, let's do it.
I'm going to add my. I'm going to go back on my slide. Oh, okay. So I did a piece recently about Louis Farrakhan, and he has sued. Oh, wait a minute. I got it all screwed up. He has sued the. He has sued. Who was it? He has sued the
The ADL.
Anti-Defamation League. Yeah, the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, and he's also sued the. Let me see if this is the right one. He sued the Anti-Defamation League and the Simon Wiesenthal Center, and the Anti-Defamation League has done an outstanding job for decades of covering his anti-Semitism. So, Mr. Farrakhan, age 90, you go ahead.
I must note that not only anti-Semitism, but they have also been crusaders in LGBTQIA plus rights and human rights abuses around the world.
Yes. Yeah, the ADL has done a great job of holding Farrakhan's feet to the fire and documenting
Right.
his speeches and his anti-Semitism. Now, I'm going to give an analysis as if I were a civilian analyst of what I think, the what Farrakhan wants, and I'd like your input. And please weigh in on the audience. We've got to get over to our comments and keep an eye on those. So let's look at our comments so far. Keep an eye on that. So a couple of things that interested me. in the lawsuit, and let me see if I have the right slide deck right here. I think I'm going to have to add in, I'm going to have to upload another slide deck, Mitch. In the lawsuit, and let me see if I have the right slide deck right here.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry about that.
So what's interesting is it's the slide deck is for 4.8 billion dollars, which is fairly mind-numbing. I'm going to grab it. I had it loaded. Just give me a minute. I'm going to have to reload this up. $4.8 billion. And what Mr. Farrakhan is seeking is he wants the term anti-Semitic to be considered defamatory per se on its face.
Right.
And that means he's basically engaging in prior restraint on speech. So I'm going to add this to the stage. This is.
Can I just ask one question, just as a kind of
Yeah.
as just kind of a bystander that may not fully
Sure.
understand this? So basically, let me just reframe that. He's basically asking for relief from the court that essentially would redefine the word anti-Semite as a racial slur, so that then they could push back at anybody that called him an anti-Semite. They want it to be like the N-word, and if you call them an anti-Semite, it's the same as calling them the N-word. Is that pretty much sum it up?
That's an interpretation. He wants it to be considered, and I'm going to show you into the lawsuit. Okay.
Okay.
This is the caption. So it's Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam versus the Anti-Defamation League. Jonathan Greenblatt individually and in his official capacity as CEO and National Director of the Anti-Defamation League. Simon Wiesenthal Center and Abraham Cooper individually. Now, his complaint is for violation of constitutionally protected rights, defamation, and for declaratory relief. Now, if we move on, this is, I learned from the lawsuit that the actual business name of the Nation of Islam is Muhammad's Holy Temple of Islam Incorporated. They are a Chicago nonprofit. So how about that? That's the real name of the organization.
Wow.
And that's named in it. And this is their corporate filing. Their president is Ismail Muhammad. So I was just checking out. So part of when I do a story on my blog, the Scientology Money Project, I'll look at corporate filings, what the real names are. And it's good to know, for example, that Muhammad's Holy Temple of Islam incorporated DBA, the Nation of Islam. So now this request for relief, if you could read this, can you see it? Can you read it? And that's really what he's looking for.
No, I can't. It's a little.
You can't. It's a little bit. Let me. I
It's too
can't
small.
enlarge it.
Maybe on my
Okay.
other computer.
Well, no, you don't have to worry. I'll read it.
Okay.
This is what he's seeking. Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam are seeking damages in the amount of $4.8 billion resulting from the defendant's violation of his First Amendment rights pursuant to the U.S. Constitution and violation of the nation's amendments. And he wants the court to declare that the false use of the term anti-Semite and all its variations and or derivatives constitute de facto defamation per se. Interestingly, he wants the court to declare that the Anti-Defamation League is a quasi-governmental actor. So
I'm sorry.
well, the
It's
anti-defamation.
insane. It's insane. Jeffrey, I don't know how you can even read this with a straight face. I mean, he thinks they're a quasi-governmental actor because he thinks the Jews are so deeply embedded in the deep state that anybody that would speak, defend Jews, and push against his anti-Semitic statements must be a quasi-governmental actor. I mean, it's just like.
Well, the Nation of Islam has received government money in the past, contracts when they were acting as security agents, in different housing projects.
Right.
Were they a governmental actor? And how can you this is the problem, the long-term attritional effect of the Anti-Defamation's excellent work in documenting Louis Farrakhan's anti-Semitism and it's raging. And
Yeah,
it's
I don't
had an
know
effect on him.
I don't know if our audience has really seen it firsthand or read his tweets, or if they
Well,
think it's just somebody engaging in speculation, which it is not.
No, in fact, he has called the Jews satanic. He said they run Hollywood, they run the banks,
Right.
and it goes on and on. I mean, just in every area of life, everything that's evil, he blames on the Jews. And I want to share a screen where, let's go to this YouTube video, and here's what he wants to do. And let's see if we can start this. Okay, now this is a YouTube video, and let's get it started.
It's this that they fear. That's right. I don't have no army. That's right. I just know the truth. And I'm here to separate the good Jews from the satanic Jews. Yes, yes, yes!
So, in that particular clip, he is saying Farrakhan has the duty, apparently handed down by God Almighty, to separate the satanic Jews from the good Jews. That frankly outraged me, Mitch, that he would say
I mean,
that. And it's so outrageous that it deserves satire. So what I did is I created this e-meter because so this Scientologist, Church of Scientology.
Yeah, no, I know that meter. Yeah. That's the Super Mark 8 good Jew, bad Jew, satanic Jew detector.
Right. That's what's he gonna? How is he gonna separate the satanic Jews from the good Jews? Is it with an e-meter? Is he gonna put all Jews on cans and the meter will read them?
Yeah,
it's preposterous to think that he has the criteria by which, because one thing, they believe that Caucasians are racially inferior to the original man, black man. So even in their doctrine, it would be impossible. You would still be an inferior. So, I mean, that's why I made this meter. It's kind of like, okay, whatever. I also noticed that in Scientology Ethics book, and Mr. Farrakhan is a Scientologist. He has his identity as in the Nation of Islam, but he practices Scientology. And in the Scientology Ethics book, you have this white Moses figure that looks like Charlton Heston. So is he going to use L. Ron Hubbard, a white man's system, to separate it? How does this even work? It's not explained. And what makes the lawsuit insane is it's free speech. It's a free speech issue. He has the freedom of speech to call Jews satanic. Okay? That's his freedom of speech. The ADL has a right to document it and call him rightfully an anti-Semite, and he denies that he's an anti-Semite.
Right.
If this went before a jury, the decades, and I'm talking about since going back to the 50s, the decades of evidence of him attacking the Jewish people are abundant. So, one question I have for David Miscavige, and we're going to get into this because you mentioned something interesting yesterday. Back in 1985, Muammar Gaddafi, the terrorist leader of Libya, he's loaned the Nation of Islam money. He loaned them the money to get their mosque in Chicago. He was going to loan them $5 million to start a toiletry firm. And this is out of the Washington Post, I believe. And the Clinton administration said no, because Gaddafi then was behind the Lockerbie bombing, which was a very serious matter, the shoot down of the 747, the Pan Am 747 over Lockerbie, Scotland. So Farrakhan, one of the questions I raised when I, back in around 2008, I saw a picture of Tony Muhammad in a Scientology publication in which Tony Muhammad, who is the Western regional director of the Nation of Islam, said that L. Ron Hubbard was an angelic figure sent by God. And I went, you got to be kidding. The Nation of Islam is now hooked up with the Church of Scientology. And yeah, that happened.
Yeah.
So
I was there. I saw it happen. So
I want your background. You made a remark that David Miscavige spoke of the ADL, and what did he say about?
Well, back in 2008, when we were reacting, I was working for the church, and we were reacting, gearing up, arming up to push against the anonymous phenomena and the worldwide protests that were going on. In the midst of all that, he said, closed doors, comment. He said, we need something like the ADL. Like, I want to start something like the ADL. And that was the beginning of the Stand League.
Really?
He wanted to model the Stand League after the ADL. That was the inspiration. The Jews, they got something to protect them. Scientologists need something. Of course, he didn't realize, and I doubt that he does ever realize, that the ADL stands for a lot of things. Yeah, they began as a protective group, as a whistleblower to push against anti-Semitism. But as I mentioned earlier, they also do a lot of work in terms of hatred and hate speech and human rights violations against the gay communities and underrepresented all kinds of people. Like the ADL is bigger than just the work they do for Jews, for the Jewish for that community. So anyway, he went, and what did they do? So they went and bought a bunch of these like cellular hotspots, because he needed to take over the internet, and he needed a bunch of keyboard warriors to be like doing websites and creating sock puppets, doing all this crazy stuff. So they went and bought, I don't know how many they bought, but they bought a bunch of like cellular hotspots, and these things, the service is the same as a cell phone, so it's not cheap. And, it was the highest level at whatever that was back then, 3G, 4G, whatever it was. And they handed them out. I got one, a bunch of other people got one, mostly like public Scientologists who were, because, you're not going to give unfettered internet access to a Sea Org member like that. They're just going to be streaming porn all day long. So anyway, we all got these things, and when we were all done streaming porn on them or whatever we were doing. But so the idea was that, we would have this unfettered access, and we could do these posts on this new thing called the Stand League. And then it just wasn't working. It was really expensive. It wasn't effective. Of course, it never could be effective because you can't synthetically create a change in your reputation on the internet. It's very difficult. You need to do it organically. And the Church of Scientology has never understood that. So they took them all away, and then they just reduced the Stand League to a few cutouts who created a lot of sock puppets and uploaded a bunch of fake stock photos, and then all they do is they do their fake indignation and they're all that other kind of stuff. So anyway, that is where it started. And so while they were around the same time as they are modeling their own, whatever you call it, self-protected mechanism, the Stand League, they're also hooking up with the NOI, which has proven itself to be the most vehemently anti-Semitic group in America.
How did you, as a Jew in the church, feel that they were hooking up with an anti-Semitic, with the Nation of Islam?
Well, it just meant that for me, I had another box that I needed to put something in, compartmentalize into, and that I had to use, mental effort to keep a lid on that box. I remember I'd heard sort of rumors about it, and I knew, what's his name, Alfred E. Johnson, the OT, formerly known as the minister, Alfred E. Johnson, because he was legitimately a Baptist minister. And then eventually, by the time he got to OT3, he stopped saying that he's just Alfred E. Johnson. But because, just as a side note about Scientology claiming that, or L. Ron Hubbard claiming that it's open to all religions, David Miscavige just in no uncertain terms said, when people get into Scientology, I don't care what religion they are, I expect them to become Scientologists. So,
sure.
That behind the line, that line is just complete crap. So, but I remember going to, they used to do the gala at CC, they do that big $500 ticket thing. And I remember the first year that there was a table surrounded by bodyguards with Farrakhan and Alfred E. Johnson and this other guy, Tony Muhammad, and all those guys. They're sitting at a table at Celebrity Center just sucking up all the wonderful catering and the lights and all that kind of warm, emotional celebrity support that Scientology can pour on. But then up in the roof of the manor, there's like one of Farrakhan's bodyguards with a sniper rifle. So it was really like
Sniper
whoa.
rifle?
Yeah, I'd never seen anybody on the roof of Celebrity Center with a sniper rifle. But yeah, he had one of his protectors up there who was a sniper. Like if anybody was coming at him with wielding a weapon, man, that guy was just going to get his head exploded. So yeah, how did I feel about it? I was like, okay, so what was the mindset? This is a mindset, and I think I engaged in this mindset. It really rubbed me the wrong way because they were so anti-Semitic. But on the other hand, the sort of attitude that was pushed by Miscavige was like, look, these guys recognized, they got it through Dianetics. Then they became Scientologists, right, Jeffrey? That was their thing, was Dianetics. And Dianetics has always been traditionally the Trojan horse of Scientology. That's how you bring it in. Main public, you bring them in and, you get this Trojan horse into society. It's called Scientology. Sure. It's called Dianetics. And all the little Scientology regs pop out and sign you up for Scientology courses. So anyway, it was like, okay, imagine this thinking. These people, the NOI, the Nation of Islam, they've recognized the truth of the reactive mind and how by getting rid of the reactive mind, everything will calm down. So the idea is that these people are now on a path to no longer being racist because they're getting into Dianetics. Why would you not accept them? You get what I'm saying? So they were being accepted in my mind, and this was a message pushed by Miscavige. They were being accepted not because of who they were at the moment, but of who they would become because of Dianetics and Scientology. Does that make sense? I know that's ridiculous logic, because there's no reason not to ask them to stop doing that in order to avail themselves of this great quote unquote technology.
Yeah, that I did not know a lot of that. Well, briefly, my understanding is that Tony Muhammad and Alfred Johnson were both community organizers and activists in Los Angeles, and there was an encounter where Tony Muhammad was beat up pretty badly by LAPD during a vigil, a candlelight vigil for a young black man who had been killed here. He was beat up by LAPD, and they wanted to arrest him, and he wanted to sue them. It got pretty ugly, and Tony Muhammad, as he tells the story, and it's on video, I have it. He was very discouraged and told Alfredi, who was in Scientology, that he was done with community activism.
Right.
And
interesting.
And as Alfredi and Tony tell the story, and again, it's on video. Alfredi said, "Look, why don't you get into Dianetics? Look, it'll help you overcome this trauma." And Tony responded well to Dianetics. I guess they ran the incident of the beating by LAPD. And
I shouldn't laugh because that's real trauma we're talking about, but it's just
it was something I very much sided with Tony on. It was clear from the LAPD's conduct. So he brightens up, and then Tony says it brings him uptone, right? Scientology word, and he goes and sees Minister Farrakhan, who's fighting prostate cancer at the time in Chicago. He goes back to headquarters, and Farrakhan says to Tony, whatever you're doing, I want it. And he said it's Scientology. So Mr. Farrakhan began a series of surreptitious meetings out at the Celebrity Center getting auditing. He would stay in the penthouse. And then it became, then he formally announced he integrated Dianetics. And like you said, Scientology always, one thing to watch, overseas, Scientology operates as Dianetics. So you always watch it.
I think in Mexico too, right?
Yeah.
In Mexico, yeah.
Well, they'll roll out as Dianetics. I found a Dianetics center in Pakistan, which I'm sure is used for money laundering. And I have found a Dianetics center in Cyprus, Colombia, in Medellin, Colombia. And I've shared this before. I think anywhere where they don't look, if you're an American cult, you're not going to be allowed in Medellin, Colombia, that's run by the cartel, unless you have some money to, pay.
Right.
Because you're going to get, otherwise you're not going to last in Pakistan as
Right.
Scientology. So this is all very suspicious to me. But the sniper on the roof, well, that would have to be cleared, I think, through the LAPD. Of course, Scientology's LAPD's in there.
Yeah, that would have been a piece of cake. I mean, plus, yeah, that's nothing.
Well, no, I want to go over that point. To say that you want to put a sniper on the roof of a building as private security, you can't do that. You have to clear it with the police.
Right.
Otherwise, because if a police helicopter goes over and sees a man with a gun, that's going to be a SWAT team issue,
Right.
So
Sure.
you have to lay those things out. But it's David Miscavige had a sniper nest at the Gold Base. What was it called? Eagle.
Yeah, the Eagle's Nest. But hold on. Yeah. But that was an observation lookout. Jackson
Okay.
Moorhead. I don't want to get shit from Jackson.
No, I don't
but
want to either.
He's going to be all over us saying there was never a sniper rifle. A guy did follow Miscavige with a rifle scope. He wasn't going to shoot anybody, but it wasn't his intention. But the guy got, his life got ruined for that. But but they did own a high-powered sniper rifle, but it was never in that nest. But that's how they looked. Guy was up there and saw. I'm sure saw. I'm going to name drop. Mark Headley jumping on a motorcycle trying to escape. That was the guy up in the Eagle's Nest who probably made the call to security to go chase him down. That's why they had it up there. It was just as much for internal security when people tried to escape.
Yeah, I've got. I want to look for something here. Now, so the beginning of the Stan League was David Miscavige wanting something like the Anti-Defamation League.
Ordering that it be done. We need something like the ADL. Okay, and so, so handing out Wi-Fi hotspots, cellular hotspots, and creating a website and saying, hey, everybody, let's get going. I mean, I was, at that time I was working on some strategy to push against Anonymous, and I was doing a lot of research to understand what it was, which has been valuable information even to this day. So,
now, were you given any orders? Were Scientology or Scientology Sea Org, were you given orders to treat the Nation of Islam members any differently?
well, no, I was never, because I didn't interact with them. I mean, I knew Alfredi. Like whenever I'd see him at an event or at an org or whatever, I'd say hi. Sometimes I'd chat with him for a minute because I had interviewed him on video, or on film rather, for a film very early in the days when they were running the what is it called? The Literacy Crusade?
Oh, yeah.
What was it called? The something?
The World
Literacy Crusade. Yeah. That was his Trojan horse. That was the wedge that he used to drive himself in with first the social betterment groups, which specifically, ABLE specifically, the study applied scholastics, which is the study tech illiteracy aspect of Scientology. They use each of the wedges that they use to drive into society has as its main component, it has an educational component, which they push. They push, learn your human rights, learn how to study, learn how to be moral. It's all like an educational component. And people tend not to disagree when you're talking educational components. When you're not talking faith, you're not talking prayer, you're not talking rituals, you're just talking sit down and study. Then it's very easy to get those messages across.
Yeah. That's I wanted to bring up a couple other things. We're going to share a screen, and this is something that I did a show a live the other day with, and it concerns Tom Cruise and his role in this.
Mm-hmm.
So share this. Now you can see that, right?
I can. What will it take for Simon Wiesenthal Thunder to call out the Church of Scientology?
Yeah, what happened is Well, right. I did a piece basically. This is 2018 press release, the Simon Wiesenthal Center, But what had happened is in 2011, the Simon Wiesenthal Center had given Tom Cruise its top humanitarian award. And this when Tom Cruise was still, rehabilitating his career after some unfortunate incidents.
Right.
And a lot of activists complained about it because of Scientology's affiliation with the Nation of Islam.
Right.
And I had contacted the Simon Wiesenthal Center, and look, You're asking people to call out Louis Farrakhan for his anti-Semitism. You gave an award to Tom Cruise. This is the solution. This is your leverage. You have your honoree, Tom Cruise, who works with the Jewish community. You have him contact his best friend, David Miscavige, and say, David, you should tell Louis Farrakhan that if he does not cease and desist in his anti-Semitism, you will revoke his licenses to practice Dianetics and Scientology. You will take that away from the Nation of Islam. That's your
Right.
leverage. And that's powerful leverage, because part of Louis Farrakhan's rationale was if members of the Nation of Islam learned to be Dianetics auditors, they could generate income and become self-sufficient. And
Right.
that was my argument to the Simon Wiesenthal Center.
Right.
It fell on deaf ears. That's my one criticism of the Simon Wiesenthal Center. They had leverage. Tom Cruise could have picked up the phone and called David Miscavige and said, hey, why don't we do something about this?
Right. Well, you know, the
What's your
seductive
take on that?
Well, two things I want to say. For one thing, the power of celebrity, you can never underestimate the power of celebrity. So it just may not be worth it to them, may not rise to the level of let's get the world's biggest movie star involved in this. We gave the guy an award, and now we're going to have to start disentangling this because of the NOI. May not even just be worth it. The other thing is, I just want to back up a second. You mentioned Tom Cruise working for the Jewish community. I don't know what he did. I can't find anything. I looked high and low. You know, he was honored by the Simon Wiesenthal Center. What work did he do? I don't know. And then he was honored by the ADL. I think more recently, he received this award for some kind of work to the Jewish community, causes, whatever. What did he do exactly? I can't find anything anywhere. Did he just give a boatload of money as a part of a safe pointing thing? Because the feeling is that, well, if Tom Cruise is safe pointed, then Scientology is safe pointed, because for all intents and purposes, in many contexts, they're the same thing. In terms of public relations and PR, they can very much be the same thing. So what did he do exactly? Usually you have to do something to actually get awarded like that.
Yeah, you know, the thinking at the time was that he made a donation.
Okay.
Because if you remember, he had his troubles with attacking psychiatry on Matt Lauer's show.
Absolutely.
And then he went to MGM. He made a bad film, Lions and the Lambs. And
Yeah, no, I think, that was a better film than I think people gave it credit for, but that's fine. That's just because I'm a Robert Redford fan. No, I think, but what about Valkyrie? I think, wasn't that the one that was, because he played, was it Valkyrie or Lions for Lambs? Because Lions for Lambs was like, it was just a flop, but it wasn't.
Yeah,
it wasn't a bad film.
It was a flop. Valkyrie, there was protests in Germany.
Right.
Because the German government and the German people have, in general, opposed Scientology, and he played a national hero, von Stauffenberg, who led the assassination attempt against Adolf Hitler. There were protests, and Tom walked right over the backs of the German people and played Stauffenberg.
Right.
And so there was talk that he made a large donation, but I don't know. I don't know what the facts are, but I know that when I did contact the Simon Wiesenthal Center, they wouldn't return my calls. You know, I tried to talk to their legal, so they didn't want anything to do with it, or me. They wanted to stay out of it.
I think that's easily answered by the seduction of money and celebrity.
Yeah.
I think that's all that is, but, still, the hypocrisy, I mean, it's like, I refer to Scientology as a number of things, and one of them is that it's a bottomless pit of hypocrisy, because everything that you look at, there's some hypocritical aspect to it. Like, sure, it's a very almost sort of like Christian, sensibility to accept broken people into your ranks because you're going to heal them. In this sense, I'm saying the brokenness is the anti-Semitic nature of the NOI, and you accept them into your fold because they'll do better and they'll be better, right? But this has not been the case with the NOI. They have been worse and have done worse.
Well, you told me that David Miscavige had that take.
Yeah.
Right.
That was something that he was pushing, like, because I remember talking to him about, but these people, man, they're like really anti-Semitic. He says, but Yeah, I know, but come on, they're doing Dianetics. Like, we fix everything, just like they fixed Andy Masterson, right? Right. We fix everything with the ideas that Dianetics, Scientology, it does fix these things. That, as a person becomes clear, they're no longer a threat. They're no longer bigoted. They're no longer a criminal. They're no longer a sexual abuser. They're whatever they are.
So speaking of, you said everything Scientology does is hypocritical. Yeah, when they're not lying, they're hypocrites. You shared this, and I want you to comment on it.
Yeah, so this I came across when I was just doing research for this stream. So I'd heard word about this, but I'd not really read about it. So Tom, there is an agent, I can't remember her name, it's in here, you can kind of maybe pan down, scroll down.
I don't have, you would have to scroll.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Your
Okay,
controls.
so here we go. So here he is, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, her name, I was just like looking for her name. She is an agent of CAA. I believe that's Tom's agency.
Yeah.
That's the agents who
The almighty
represent him.
CAA.
Yeah, and so there's what is her name? Her name is Dakil, is her last name. She may even be on his agent team, Maha Dakil. Anyway, she makes a statement. She tweets, very bad timing. I agree with her 100%. Listen, so nobody thinks, I don't want there to be any question about what side I'm on. I personally think that Israel is involved in a genocide in Palestine. I think this is a war that Hamas brought to their doorstep that they didn't want, and their reaction is horrific. So, but the day of the bombing is not the day that you speak out. And this woman, she tweeted on the day of the attack, which is really bad timing. People were in shock. They're in mourning. And then Tom stepped up. He supported her. She got so much stuff. She eventually took the tweet down, but she really got attacked for this. She took it down. She apologized. Tom supported her for being pro-Palestine. So, and I was saying, hey, good for you, Tom. I'm glad you did that. Okay, so, but that's because when somebody does something good, I don't care that they're a member of a horrible cult. They still get acknowledged for it. So, but the point is, here you have Tom Cruise receiving awards from being recognized by the Simon Wiesenthal Center, by the Anti-Defamation League, and then being publicly pro-Palestine, and then receiving the biggest award from his religion for the what is it called, the Medal of Freedom Award.
Yeah.
And that same organization, Scientology, has also awarded that to the top lieutenant in the most anti-Semitic group in America, the NOI. And you look at all this and you're like, how do you even begin to untangle so many tangents of hypocrisy that are going on that none of them are speaking out about or being called out about?
Yeah, that's it. That is interesting. I'm going to take this out. Yeah, so Tom Cruise wants it all ways, And
I guess so. I mean, it's like, it really makes me question why he spoke out for her, because, you're drawing lines. People are drawing lines. This is what really angers me. With some things you don't draw lines, like myself, body shaming, I don't draw lines. Like, it's not everybody's on one side of a line who's an evil cult leader. It's okay to body shame them, but if you're my friend, it's not. I'd say you don't draw the line. You know what I'm saying? And it's the same thing with genocide. It's the same thing with bigotry. It's the same thing with anti-Semitism. There's no line. So Tom Cruise has drawn these lines. He's like, oh, if it's an agent at CAA, who I know personally, and I'm sure he does, I'll stick up for her, right? Because I'll throw my weight in there because she's being, she's speaking out against the war in Israel. Oh, if it's Simon Wiesenthal Center, oh, I'll give them a bunch of money and they'll give me an award. You get what I'm saying? Oh, yes, I will get up on the same stage as Tony Muhammad and receive an award, the same award that he got, albeit a larger, more shinier version of it. So this is my point. They're drawing these lines, and that's what makes these things very, very, very complicated. Because when it rises to the level of life and death, where people are living and dying because of people's ideas, then you can't equivocate. You have to be very clear on what side you're on and what your intentions are. When people say, "Oh, I don't play politics" or whatever, that's fine until the invading force is at your doorstep. Then there's a certain point at which you have to choose sides. And I think, the war in Israel is one of those. I think the bigotry of the NOI is another one of those. You just don't draw lines.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I'm going to share a little bit about. I'm going to share the screen. This is from the LA Times, and it says this is about Tony Muhammad. I found it to be very interesting. This is from 2002 to give some background on the Nation of Islam's Tony Muhammad, and it starts out that Muhammad owns more than 40 suits, mostly custom designed, some 30 pairs of shoes. Okay, now he says,
That's in keeping with the cult leader right there.
yeah. Well, I mean, haberdashery, very, very fine clothing is a characteristic of the nation. They're always immaculately
Yeah,
dressed.
yeah. We used to see those guys standing
And
on the street corner selling pies, and they're just very tailored and bow ties, and they're slick. They look good.
Well, yeah. I mean, I worked in corporate. You do. Appearance counts. It matters.
Yeah,
Now, this is
nobody's.
interesting.
Yeah. Go
Now,
ahead.
Tony Muhammad said he said the taste for quality was cultivated during a career as a real estate executive at a national fast food restaurant chain, but most of
Right.
his clothes today are gifts. So he
Right.
said he made 300 a week. Now, get this, Muhammad was first inspired by Farrakhan in 1985. He said he was cutting up a kilo of cocaine and listening to a friend's videotape of Farrakhan. At the time, Muhammad said, excuse me, he was utterly irreligious. He detested the way his mother futilely prayed to a picture of a white Jesus for salvation from poverty. He said he was working as a manager at Eastern Airlines in Atlanta and making 5 times as much money dealing drugs, which he would wrap around his waist and slip through unchecked by airport security. And so this is the paragraph. Something about Farrakhan's voice mesmerized him. So he says he was cutting up a kilo of cocaine and listening to a cassette tape of Farrakhan someone had given him. And that's what converted him. He's cutting up a kilo of cocaine, and he saw that he could rechannel his energies from community destruction to salvation. He said he flushed his cocaine down the toilet and joined the nation the next day. So this was an interesting part of his background, and just wanted to share that. Let me take it off screen. I wanted to share that. So that's kind of his background. He says, he was a drug dealer, and that the nation got him off of drugs. And certainly, you came from that background into Scientology.
Which background? The cutting up a block of cocaine?
Well, I mean, you left film school as a drug addict.
I did. I dropped out.
And so that's a parallel. It's many people who have problems with substance abuse do find salvation in religion. Now, salvation is a
But if I could
qualified word.
if I can just, let me qualify that.
It's a
Let me
very
qualify
qualified word, yeah.
Yeah, so essentially, cults will tend to, the easiest recruits for cults are people who are in a vulnerable position and who are idealistic. A lot of times people are both. They're vulnerable and they're idealistic. So like for me, which I've well documented in my memoir that I wrote, I was definitely, my entire life had exploded. I was 23 years old. I dropped out of film school. I was addicted to heroin, blah, 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 blah. So I was pretty vulnerable. So yeah, I can certainly understand that. It's funny because the picture that you painted, that Tony Muhammad painted for himself, he's cutting up a block of cocaine probably worth $300,000. That's not exactly rock bottom. I was at rock bottom. Usually you find that, and even addiction specialists will say this, that professionals will say this, that addicts, they need to hit rock bottom before they say, wow, I really need some help. They tend not to do it, when they're, so that's so weird to me that he's cutting up a brick of cocaine as opposed to, he's homeless on the streets, selling himself for a hit of crack or some really horrific thing, and then I needed salvation. I looked up, Jesus appeared, or whatever, Muhammad appeared, or whatever. It's really kind of weird to me that he's like, You know,
Well,
a cocaine addict with a brick of cocaine is not hit
well,
rock bottom.
no, he's a corporate executive, and he's making good money as a corporate executive
Right, right.
for Eastern Airlines, and he's got enough money to go buy a block of cocaine and make a lot.
Yeah, or he's got
making,
he's got the connections for somebody to front it to him, but he's got cash flow, man. He ain't hit rock bottom. So I'm kind of like, what is this all about? Like, wait a minute, you know, it just doesn't ring true to me, not based on my experience.
you know, what's interesting to me, Chris Shelton, I did a podcast with him many years ago. I've been podcasting on Surviving Scientology 2013, 2014. I have
Right.
maybe about 90 podcasts, some with people who are no longer with us, like former executive director international Bill Franks, a good
Right.
friend who Karen and I were very close with. So Chris Shelton told me that when the Nation of Islam was being ramped into the Church of Scientology, they were told to not crush reg them. You know, to not put the heavy financial pressure on.
Yeah, that crush regging, just for those of you who don't know, basically means
Yeah.
close the door. You ain't leaving until you give us some money.
That's the hard sell.
Yeah.
Eternity's at stake. We need $50,000 tonight.
Right.
Can we
And
put
if you
you down
need
for
if you need
10,000?
if you need to mortgage your house, that's the right thing to do.
Yeah, because that's just messed.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
So it's interesting as in terms of I wanted to go, let me go back to my slideshow because I wanted to bring something up on my slideshow,
Okay.
on my slide deck. Okay, now this is the corporate filing for 2023 for Muhammad's Holy Temple of Islam Incorporated, doing business as the Nation of Islam.
Right.
If you look at section 5, I draw your attention to it, viewers. It says they want a brief statement of the activities of the corporation. It says, quote, the indoctrination in the religious principles of Islam on the leading of an Islamic life is taught and exemplified by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad Messenger, unquote. So if the Nation of Islam is to teach you how to lead an Islamic life, as exemplified, again, as exemplified by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad Messenger, nowhere does the Honorable Elijah Muhammad mention Dianetics or Scientology at all. That's absent. So this is something that Fard Muhammad, Elijah Muhammad never mentioned. This is something Farrakhan brought late on the chain, to use a Scientology term, into the Nation of Islam. And it caused quite a bit of dissension. Some people left. You can go on the internet and search, and you can see plenty of YouTubers who are very critical of the nation. They're very people that are pro. So it is interesting because it's sort of as has been noted, the cosmology in Scientology with Xenu and the volcanoes and the implanting and the DC-8 space planes, space opera. The Nation of Islam has a mother wheel, or I'm sorry, a mothership that they believe will fire many small ships to destroy the U.S. There's a kind of a space opera cosmology in the Nation of Islam, for lack of a better term. But the two groups really don't integrate. The Nation of Islam, being black separatists, they may make appearances at orgs here in America, but they seem to assemble differently. Apostate Alex told me, however, and I've seen it in a scattered here, that some Nation of Islam members are on regular staff. Apostate Alex said that in the UK, in England, is very common. There's a lot more Nation of Islam members on regular Scientology staff. So I don't know what the demarcation line is specified by Mr. Farrakhan. But apparently they can go on to Scientology staff. Tony Muhammad became an OT3. So my question, if you're in the Nation of Islam and you're supposed to lead a life as taught by Elijah Muhammad, how does that integrate with the OT3 levels? Because that would be like a Buddhist being a Christian. They're dissimilar. So I've never known. I can understand lower level bridge, the Dianetics, the grades. I could kind of understand anyone doing that, right? But once you get into the OT levels, which is very distinctive, and this brings me back to something else I wanted to share. That can you see them integrating, Mitch?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's so funny when you were saying that, and I haven't really thought this through, so I hope none of this comes off in a bad way. But if you're familiar with what's called the cargo cult or the cult of the cargo, does that ring a bell?
Yeah, cargo cult. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that's. I think it's a Melanesian island where this amazing phenomena happen. These sort of ethnic people, these kind of native people, and I'm not saying that the Nation of Islam by any, they're very civilized, advanced, people part of our today's culture. These people, they had a certain cosmology, they had a certain way of looking at the universe and the earth, and they had a religion. And then, back in the time of World War II, U.S. military put a base on that island. They put a runway, they landed planes, and then all of a sudden there were Coca-Cola machines and all this stuff. And these people didn't know what to make of it. They'd never seen white people. They'd never seen an airplane. They'd never seen any of this technology. And they started to absorb it into their belief system. And when the U.S. military, when the United States left the island, they started building bamboo idols that looked like planes, and they started worshiping them. And part of the religion became this form of worship that was intended to bring this higher technological society back to their land so that they could benefit from it. Now, moving forward, these people, these Melanesian people who were part of the cargo cult, not many years ago, the leader of that country, was the president of the country. He went to, it was like Oxford or Cambridge or Harvard, like he went and had the highest level of kind of Western education, but he still believed in that whole cargo cult thing. Like it was still part of his religion. Like none of that going to the West, flying on airplanes, none of that changed his mind about it. So there's sort of no end to the way people can reshape and reform these cosmologies in their mind to make them work within the context of whatever their original religious beliefs were.
Yeah, keeping two unlike things together.
I mean, yeah, I'm sorry if I'm being too academic about that, but I think that that's a really apt analogy. They're kind of like the cargo cult, the NOI, unless they're just doing it for money because they know every time they sign up their people, they get commissions.
Sure. Oh, we'll get to that in a minute. I wanted to
Okay.
share something here on the screen. Now, this is what the IRS, or Scientology told the IRS when it was
Yeah.
applying for its tax exemption in 1992.
Yeah.
It said, quote, although there is no policy or scriptural mandate expressly requiring Scientologists to renounce other religious beliefs or membership in other churches, as a practical matter, Scientologists are expected to and do become fully devoted to Scientology to the exclusion of other faiths.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
let me
Well,
continue.
I think they did that for the, just let me insert one thing. I think they
Yeah.
did that because they couldn't look to the IRS like they were some kind of hobby horse religion, like a little side gig religion. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. Well, one of the tenets to qualify for 501c3 tax exemption is you have to be distinctive. So they're
Right.
saying, but no, this is true. You
Right.
have to, when Hubbard said, when someone signs up for Scientology, consider that they're on board with the rest of us for the
Right.
duration of the universe. We'd rather
Right.
have you dead than be incapable.
Right.
So, no, this is true. They're expected to, as a practical matter, Scientologists are expected to and do become fully devoted to the exclusion of other faiths. That means you better stop being a Baptist. You'd better stop being a member of the Nation of Islam, as I
Right.
read it. Okay.
Right.
As Scientologists, they are required to look only to Scientology scriptures for answers to the fundamental questions of their existence and to seek enlightenment only from Scientology. That would preclude Scientologists from looking to Elijah Muhammad or Minister Farrakhan. Thus, a Scientologist who grew up in the Jewish faith, who continues formal membership in his synagogue and attends services with his family, violates no policy or tenet. On the
Right.
other hand, Such a person is not permitted to mix the practice of his former faith into his practice and understanding of Scientology so as to alter Orthodox Scientology in any way. So
Right.
technically speaking, you cannot be a Scientologist and a member of the Nation of Islam or a Christian or a Buddhist or a Jew. You're expected what they told the IRS. Now, this is where Scientology lies, and you have to know how it's lying. They will say Scientology will make you a better Christian or make you a better member of the Nation of Islam or a better Buddhist, whatever.
Yeah.
But as a practical matter, you're expected to drop that. And you're
Right.
expected, as you move up the bridge, you will learn that these are R6 implanted religions, that these were implanted into you during Incident 2 of OT3. So this discontinuity, I can understand on the lower levels when you don't know about the OT3 implanting,
Right.
they might let you attend your church, but at some point
Right.
they're going to say, no, you can't go up the bridge unless you drop it. So that's what I've never understood is this discontinuity of looking to Minister Farrakhan and his guidance of Fard Muhammad and Elijah Muhammad and his
Right.
guidance and L. Ron Hubbard. And this was a
Right.
question Farrakhan had to address early on. So
Right.
to me, I don't understand. I'd like to hear from a member of the Nation of Islam come on the show and explain it. Riza Islam has tried to hijack Scientology and say it was the creation. In Nation of Islam, they believe that the black man is the original man.
Right.
And I'm using that term man. That's what they say. That's their language. And I'm not, they just say black man meaning person, right? Male
Right.
and female.
Right.
They say that the black man was the original man. And so Riza Islam has tried to do this deft sleight of hand in interviews where he says that Dianetics, L. Ron Hubbard wrote that Dianetics is the result of 50,000 years of thinking men. And therefore, because the black man was the original man, Dianetics is therefore the creation of the black man. And therefore, Hubbard was just bringing forth, he was a vehicle to bring forth the original teaching of the black man. And therefore, Dianetics and Scientology is ultimately the creation of the black man. And
Makes sense.
now, but that's as squirrel as hell, because in keeping Scientology working, Hubbard tells you to hammer out of existence. You cannot attribute Scientology and Dianetics to anyone other than L. Ron Hubbard, who is the source, the
Right.
only source of Scientology. So I see Riza Islam as a squirrel. If we were going to look at this as doctrinaire Scientologists, would you see him as a squirrel if you were a doctrinaire Scientologist trying to hijack Scientology and Dianetics
Well,
and say,
would I see Riza Islam as a squirrel? Well, in order for
Yeah.
me to see him, he's
I'm
not.
just going-
No, I just see him. I see him as a criminal. I don't really see him as a squirrel, because in order to be a squirrel, you have to be applying something. You have to be misapplying something in Scientology. He's misattributing it. He's not misapplying it. And so there's like no, like the height of squirreldom was like when, Marty went off and created the Church of Marty and Marty Rapin, and he was auditing people and blah, blah, blah. That's a squirrel. He's misapplying.
okay, so what
Yeah.
happens in Scientology if you were to misattribute and you were to say, and this gets really interesting.
Well, I'm sorry, but you would immediately be deemed as that's a suppressive act. It's more to me, that would be more along the lines of not being a squirrel as much as being like, because you're not altering the tech. You have to alter the tech to be a squirrel.
Well, question I noticed.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Chuck Beatty,
okay.
we have Chuck Beatty is on commenting community. Chuck, could you weigh in on the comments? What would happen? What is Riza Islam doing when he's attributing Scientology and Dianetics to the black man and not to L. Ron Hubbard? Could you weigh in on a comment, Chuck? I would like you to do that. See, this is these are the things I think through, because Riza Islam, as he appears on the various media he does, by the way, in the lawsuit, it's over 1,000 pages. It's almost 1,500 pages. Riza is mentioned with Tony Muhammad as part of the people who the Anti-Defamation League have named as anti-Semites. He's actually, there's a photo of him with Farrakhan's inner circle of social media, high profile. Let's get Chuck Beatty's comment. Jeffrey, how I squeezed Farrakhan's logic was he grasped the case aspect of Scientology's spiritual mission. If one uses case as the main Scientology target, you can find an NOI draw to Scientology.
Yeah, good point, Chuck. That's a really good point.
I appreciate that, Chuck. You know, because when I was listening to Farrakhan early on, selling Dianetics to his congregants in the nation, he was basically, and coming from my Christian background, he seemed to be saying, Mr. Farrakhan seemed to be saying, Scientology will address the fallen nature spoken of in the Bible. And because I had intellectually thought, how would I sell Scientology to Christians? I would say, well, it addresses the fallen nature, the Adamic fallen nature.
Yeah.
And it gets in there. And we're getting a little bit far afield, but this is theologically, I can see Riza Islam trying to migrate the works of L. Ron Hubbard into the original man through the 50,000 years of thinking men, and the black man in their theology preceded the Caucasian. In fact, in Nation of Islam, the Caucasian was an inferior race created by a black scientist called Yaqub.
So strangely a Jewish sounding name, but
well, there was a comment much earlier by CWC Sonichu, also known as COB Bilf, who
right.
L. Ron Hubbard is a product of Yaqub's devilishment. Well, yes, technically that would be a great way to look at it, but I don't think Louis Farrakhan and the Nation would be online with you. But that's an insightful comment. It's funny, but it's insightful.
Yeah.
If we were coming at it from a framework, a framework. So
yeah,
Mitch.
Yeah. Well, first of all, we should maybe address the fact that man hasn't been here for 50,000 years. So I always figured that was like a cumulative, like if you had 50,000 people who had all researched for 1 year, you could say that was 50,000 years. So I don't know what was the measurement of it. If you just backed up 50,000 years, there weren't any people on Earth 50,000 years ago.
Well, the beauty of being L. Ron Hubbard is you don't have to be logical or scientific.
Of course not.
No science in Scientology. In fact, as has been pointed out, the L. Ron Hubbard talks about the volcanoes in Incident 2 of OT3 75,000 years ago, and those volcanoes weren't there, as has been pointed out many times.
But Jeffrey, that's easily explainable. You just don't believe in the multiverse. Anybody who believes in the multiverse knows that in some other parallel universe where this was really all going on, that those volcanoes did exist. So you can use sort of Marvel logic to explain any of that stuff away. Hey, but I will.
Mr. Brisker.
Yes, sir.
May I just interject?
Yes,
Multiverse. This is my self-published book, What Caused the Big Bang.
Yeah.
Now
there you go. You know the multiverse.
I am an absolute multiverse guy.
Okay. So what if I told you that whole story happened in a parallel universe?
Look at that beautiful artwork.
Oh my God. Is that like a multiverse?
Yes. In fact, it's the cloud of life.
Okay, so then we have reached a new level of understanding.
No, I'm saying sometimes we'll have to talk about my multiverse cosmology. Scientology tries to use it to discredit me, but because I say certain things in this book, I had some spiritual experiences.
Right. And
I'm very proud of the book, and it's a sophisticated multiverse cosmology. It's metaphysical. And what's so funny is they try to discredit me, but Scientology is actually promoting my book. So
right.
So David Miscavige is promoting my book, and it's available on Amazon. What causes
Yeah,
Big
no, I'm
Bang.
definitely going to read it, and then we're going to talk about it.
And-
Yeah,
well,
big time.
I would love to, but the point is, I had a spiritual experience and I wrote a book. L.
Right.
Ron Hubbard did the same thing. So what is the difference? People write about their spiritual experiences, and that's what L. Ron Hubbard said as he wrote about, what his research, right? And that's another hypocrisy. So this leads into another thing. And since Chuck Beatty's here, we always have fun with the OT levels. Let's go off course for a minute, and we'll wrap it up. Has it been an hour? You know what? Karen and I have a friend named Jim, and he is a former Scientology OT, right? He got kicked out of the church. And they attacked Jim on their hate website, Stan League, which is a horrible, horrible garbage, degraded, filthy garbage people. Their OSA internet unit, Gloria and Gavino, they're just ragingly, I think, mentally ill, sadistic garbage.
Yeah.
But Jim, they attacked for talking to dead people, being in communication with dead people.
Right.
But all the OT levels with your body thetans, those are dead people you're telepathically communicating with on your via your email.
Yeah. Can we put that on the bottomless pit of hypocrisy board?
Yeah,
just pin it up there.
Yeah, but again, a shout out to Scientology for promoting my book.
Yeah.
That would
That's
be
great.
like high crime, I guess. So anyway,
Minimally. Well,
Yeah.
before we switch subjects,
Yes.
I thought of a quote I wanted to share with everybody. This has to do with how a bit earlier, you were mentioning about the idea of Tony Mohammed porting Scientology, or rather Riza Islam, porting Scientology over into a Christian context, right?
yeah,
So when Alfred Johnson came on, he was a Baptist minister. And so there was a lot of people saying, see, we have a guy who's a Baptist minister. And that was being pushed a lot. I mean, eventually he no longer preaches in church or
Yeah.
whatever. So I was doing some kind of a propaganda video for the church, and I was interviewing a black woman who was a Baptist. She identified as a Baptist and as a Scientologist. And so inevitably I asked her about her state of existence and how she could rationalize, like, you're a Baptist, but what have you learned from Scientology? And so she broke this down in such a beautiful way. And then I took this line and I used it to sort of propagate the idea that Scientology was relevant to the Christian religion. And basically her answer was that and this is such a brilliant piece of propaganda, I have to hand it to this woman. She said, the Bible taught me to love my neighbor, and Scientology taught me how. Okay, so I know. It's just like, I look back on that because I was like, that's awesome. I'm putting that on bumper stickers. But I look back at that now.
Taught me how to love, so long as they're not suppressive, they don't have
Yeah.
counter intention and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Now, my wife, Karen Della Carrier, former Class 12K supervisor, trained on the ship under L. Ron Hubbard. I want to ask her the same question I asked Chuck Beatty. Karen, how do you answer that? What is Riza Islam doing when he's attributing the works of Scientology and Dianetics not to L. Ron Hubbard, but to the original man? Well, how do you and how does he wrap his mind around it? If you could answer in the comments, I'll read it. I'd love to get Karen's comments on it because she's an expert in the tech.
Right.
She doesn't subscribe to it anymore, but she did train to Class 12 CS
Right.
under the Commodore himself. Talk about a life. There's a picture of Ron with his Ray-Bans on. He's got his Rolex, cools in his shirt pocket, his cravat.
Right.
He's out there on the Mediterranean running his empire by telex.
Right.
Wow. So it's interesting. You never met L. Ron Hubbard, correct?
No, I never did.
You came on after he had dropped the body.
No. I was around, but I didn't. I was before he dropped. He left in '86. I worked for the church starting in 1990. No, I never had the opportunity to meet him. I got fake letters from him. Yeah, go ahead.
You got fake letters from
Yeah, I got
L. Ron
fake
Hubbard?
letters. Yeah, I got fake letters because we were all pushed, right to Ron, tell him how it's going, and they had this thing called the Karen would remember, Chuck would remember. It was called the SO1 line.
Yeah, the SO1 line.
And there was a box in every org, and you could just drop a note on there, and it would go straight to Ron. And then he had people working 24/7 answering these and faking his signature, which I found out later. So so I got fake notes from him, but I never met him.
How much now? You came on board on the David Miscavige era of Scientology.
A little bit, just slightly earlier because
Slightly
it
earlier?
was no. I went to work. Yeah, no, it was earlier because I came on board early 1973, and so I don't know what I'm trying to think what Miscavige was 73. Where were they? I mean, where were they in 73? I know in 78 he was in La Quinta with Hubbard, and a bunch of messengers were out there, Mike Render and
No,
so I don't know what was happening in 73, but when I came on, like David Mayo was still the senior CS and
Wow.
so 73, he hadn't been booted out yet.
no. Now Karen de la Carriere weighs in.
She would know.
It is a suppressive act to
Yeah.
state any part of Scientology was created by others. Thank you, Karen. That
Yeah.
means to you, Riza Islam, you have it from an L. Ron Hubbard trained Class 12K supervisor, formerly, who's left the church, that you're committing a suppressive act by trying to arrogate. That's a great word. To arrogate something is to take it falsely. To arrogate unto the Nation of Islam the works of L. Ron Hubbard, and to assign or what word did you use, Mitch? Misattribute.
It's the wrong attribution. It's because remember he calls himself source. So if you try to move that target, it's
So Riza, you're busted, and in fact, Karen adds, Riza is violating keeping Scientology working, which I thought he is. He's committing a high crime by saying L. Ron Hubbard took the works of others. No, because in Scientology, he is the source. There's no other source.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you look at their stated business purposes, Dianetics and Scientology didn't exist when the nation was created. So maybe their workaround is that Muhammad's Holy Temple of Islam Incorporated was formed in, I believe, 1985. So who knows? Maybe there was a cutout there. So it is interesting take on the whole thing. And so there's a lot of moving parts. But the bottom line is this. Louis Farrakhan does not want to be called an anti-Semite. He's 90 years old. He wants to sue. He wants to have a court order the Anti-Defamation League and the Simon Wiesenthal Center to not use that word or have it be deemed defamation on its face, defamation per se. And the fact that he doesn't want his legacy to be that of an anti-Semite, a couple of things it shows. The long-term effect of the Anti-Defamation League calling him into account, document his anti-Semitism, he doesn't like it. Well, once you say things you don't get to take them back. And his idea that he will sue for $4.8 billion, that would risk the Nation of Islam. They would have to show their financial records, including loans from Muammar Gaddafi, terrorist, who shot down a 747, killed all those people. They would have to produce financial records to show that they were harmed in the amount of $4.8 billion.
Right.
It's also censorship. It's censorship, and that's what bothers me, Mitch, is the Nation of Islam wants to attack Jews, gay people, everyone else, anyone they feel like they need to be attacked, right? But they don't want to be criticized for what they're doing. So I see that as hypocritical. It's the same thing with Scientology. Do you remember in the 90s where they said freedom of speech is not the freedom to attack a religion?
Right.
That self-serving is like, it's a one-way flow in Scientology. It's like where David Miscavige talks and you listen. It doesn't work like that out here.
Yeah. Well, I remember when the whole anonymous thing was happening, he was like stomping around the room, just really mad as hell and saying, one day he just exploded, and he said he expressed how much he hates the internet, because on the internet anybody can say whatever they want with impunity. Well, that's not 100% true, because it's not impunity, but saying anything you want, that's called free speech. So essentially he was stomping around the room swearing, "I hate free speech." Of course he hates free speech. Anybody who has something to worry about in terms of being spoken against, they hate free speech.
Yeah, and you're going to get it now. Karen says, there is a list of antisocial characteristics in the Scientology policy letter, and attributing any of Scientology to others is antisocial.
There you go.
So
there you go.
we have Riza Islam then would be an antisocial personality.
Yeah, he's definitely.
Karen, is that correct? Is he an SP technically,
Yeah.
Karen? Please weigh in.
Well, maybe we should
John,
invite him onto SBTV then.
that would be interesting. That would be very interesting if he would come on. I would certainly talk
Yeah,
to him.
it'd be great. But is this a crazy idea, Jeffrey? I'm not a lawyer, but should we be suing the church for calling us, although they haven't necessarily done it to me yet, suppressive? Should we try to get relief from the court because this word suppressive is actually a slur?
Well, we would, if we could talk to Mr. Farrakhan's lawyers, I'm sure they would write up a lawsuit if we paid them
maybe
a lot of
they'd help
money.
us out.
Now, there's a definite line where things become actual defamation and slander, and that's Leah Remini's lawsuit.
Right.
Because if you read the pure malicious intent,
right,
and the intent to financial harm, Leah's got, I think, an exceptionally strong case when a jury sees what they're doing and how they're acting in concert and what fair game is altogether.
Right.
So free speech is quite different, and there are barriers even for celebrities.
Right.
Now, Farrakhan, like I said, the Anti-Defamation League and the Simon Wiesenthal Center, and I agree with them completely that this case is meritless and baseless. I don't even know why Mr. Farrakhan, if you read through it, it's a litany that goes back into the 50s of every bad thing they've ever said about him. And it includes J. Edgar Hoover. It includes the ADL. When you read it, it's almost incoherent, parts of it. And I do read lawsuits. I do that for a hobby.
Wow, I do graphs for a hobby. No, just kidding.
Yeah. No, it's sort of like, it's interesting to read lawsuits.
I'll bet.
And so Chuck Beatty comments, Jeffrey, I took Nation of Islam as being allowed a huge long honeymoon period to each of them, and how they absorbed the Scientology tech into their lives, including making a sense of it, each NOI person interested. So Chuck, would you say that they were allowed to gradiently ramp into Scientology? Is it gradient? And so maybe that's how it's done, but that was an interesting podcast. So I think that my prediction, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm just, I am a private investigator. I work with a lot of lawyers, a lot of really smart lawyers. And smartest one in fighting Scientology, of course, is Graham Barry, whose work I very much admire. I like reading his briefs. My prediction is just, a guy out here, is that the Anti-Defamation League and the Simon Wiesenthal Center will file a motion to get the case thrown out, because I don't think there is a case here. I don't really think there's trial.
I don't think that's going to court. I think it's going to get laughed out. I think that's going to be seen as silly as when Fox News sued, what's his name, because he'd written a book called, what the hell's his name? He used to be a senator, the comedian. He wrote a book called Lying Liars and the Lies That They Tell, and it was all about how
Al Franken.
Al Franken, and he had used Al Franken had used the term. What was Fox's buzz saying? It was something about
fair and balanced.
Fair and
news.
balanced, right? And so they sued Al Franken because he was using their saying fair and balanced, and Al Franken never even showed up in court because the judge basically threw it out laughing and said, "Wait a minute, you can't." That would be like saying you owned cold and fresh for talking about beer. So I have a feeling it's going to be laughed out of the court on that kind of level.
Well, it's one of those things you have to have as I said, you have to have a tribal issue of fact. So we're going to go back to this, and then we'll end it up. I just want to go through this one more time.
Okay.
Let me see if I still have it ready to go. No, I don't. But basically, I wanted to go through that video again, but we don't need to, where he said that his job is to sort out the good Jews from the satanic Jews. Look, anything that you bring to the court to say, look, is there a tribal issue of fact? Or when he's said this hundreds of times over decades, thousands of times, I don't know how many times over decades, if the ADL produces its documentation and brings to the court, what's in dispute? What's the tribal issue? You said these things. It's free speech. You haven't been damaged financially. In fact, you've been quite free to do whatever you want, including associating with Muammar Gaddafi. Here's one more thing I'm going to add that's always bothered me. Mr. Farrakhan tried to defend Muammar Gaddafi by saying he was doing good things for his people in Libya. He was building infrastructure, roads, drinking water, etc. Which to me, my response would be, well, Hitler built the Autobahn. He approved building of the Volkswagen so that the German people would have an expensive car, the people's car.
And how about them rockets that got us to the moon?
Yeah, so the argument that Muammar Gaddafi, and I'd always wonder why, when Muammar Gaddafi was falling from power, he used there was a revolt against his government in Libya. Muammar Gaddafi was using his army, his helicopters, to actually fire on his own people, to murder them in the streets. I always wonder why Muammar Gaddafi would fit Scientology's classic definition of a suppressive person.
Right.
This for the sake of argument, okay? Why Farrakhan was allowed to stay in Scientology in good standing when he was the friend of a murderous terrorist who was slaughtering his own people as he was falling from power.
Right.
That's something that David Miscavige will never answer for, because he will never come out in public and answer for anything.
Right.
But we'll end it with two comments by Chuck. The only saving grace for Rizza is he is considered to still be in the honeymoon period of being a participant in Scientology practices. I don't know, Chuck. Maybe come on the show. I think the honeymoon's been long over, because they came in 2008. So I don't quite agree with you. Gradient allowed to become Scientologists as far as they wish to go into it. Maybe, that's like, at some point, as I understand Scientology, you better get with the program. Otherwise, I don't think you would be allowed to be a dilettante forever, Mitch, would you?
Well, yeah, but I also, there's a great PR value. I mean, there's a video, there's a series of videos on the Scientology network. They're called Something of Humanity, Voices of Humanity. It's one of their series. And they'll single people out that they feel deserve recognition for doing work in humanity. Of course, they're all their own people. And they did one on Tony Muhammad just prior to him winning the medal, when they were really pumping him up, and they were showing it's a faux documentary, it's a stage faux documentary, showing how he is working as a community organizer within the inner city to bring gangs together, to have people, so that there's to foster cooperation and some, like, they're pushing their way to happiness and blah blah blah. So I think there's a lot of PR that you can spin off of these people, and so holding them in a kind of a warm, cocoon of emotional support, and not leaning into them too heavily and saying, well, it's time to get with the program. As long as that generates this kind of PR, they'll hold them in that privileged position.
Oh, that's a good point. Thank you. And one final question. Somebody, I assume, took your job at the Church of Scientology
Yeah, at Goldner Productions
Yeah,
or
so- yeah,
Scientology
Gold-
Media Productions.
yeah, Scientology Media Productions.
Yeah,
Do you think?
nobody really took it, but a bunch
no,
of
but
people
you're-
took it, and they
Mitch,
keep
you
getting
were-
fired. Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I don't want to toot my own horn. I'm here to
No.
get a message out, but
Okay,
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I have a serious question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Somebody,
I'm ready.
Whoever is there, even if it's a revolving door,
Right.
what in your opinion would happen if Louis Farrakhan called David Miscavige and said, "I'd like Scientology Media Productions to do a special on my lawsuit. I want to be heard. You have a network."
Oh,
Would they do a 1 hour special on Mr. Farrakhan talking about his
no.
lawsuit against the ADL?
Absolutely not. They would not. They would not. I'll tell you though, you just reminded me of a really funny story. Okay, I mentioned this before, but I got the group wrong. So when Miscavige bought that property from KECT and spent $100 million buying it and renovating it, he discovered that not the B'nai B'rith, the other Jewish organization, what is the name of
JDL?
Not the JL. No, this is an organization like B'nai B'rith, which arranges money, raises money and helps people. It's one of the Jewish organizations that every year they did their yearly telethon at KCET, which now Scientology now owns, right? So Miscavige said, tell them they are free to use our studio, which was much nicer than KCT because they'd spent, $75 million, whatever, renovating it. Tell them they can come in here and do their telethon. They don't have to pay anything. They just have to pay for food and the electricity. Like, this is a great deal. I mean, it's expensive to run get a broadcast facility like that. And their answer was that they never even answered. They were like, they wanted nothing to do with Scientology because that is the one group, and I can't even remember the name. It wasn't B'nai B'rith, it was the other one. That was the one group that was like, nah, I don't think so. You guys are the NOI guys. I don't think we want to do that. But I don't think they would do that because that's kind of embroils them in a kind of controversy. And that would just light up the Twitterverse with the controversy. That's why they will never do it.
Well, this is how I want to end it.
Okay.
David Miscavige and the Church of Scientology and Scientology Media Productions, their $100 million television network, will not do a 1 hour feature on Louis Farrakhan's $4.8 billion lawsuit against the Anti-Defamation League.
Not a chance.
So you can see the limits. They want the PR for the Nation of Islam, but if if Mr. Farrakhan asks for a voice on their network, no. The answer is no.
Yeah, they want the good stuff, none of the bad stuff. I mean, listen, Jeffrey, I was in the meetings. That station, they had done insane investigative reporting into people like Alex Gibney and what's his name, Wright, who wrote...
Yeah, Lawrence Wright. Lawrence
Wright and Tracy McManus and all of these journalistic, broadcast, filmmaking enemies of Scientology. They had done intense journalistic investigation on these people, and they were going to produce these incredible exposés. And it's one of the reasons why he bought that station. And then all of a sudden it was nothing but TV ads. It was nothing but infomercials and nothing controversial. And so, they just, because at the end of the day, they're marketing. The only people that watch that are Scientologists. So why would he want to broadcast that to Scientologists, that Farrakhan is suing the ADL? Like that's just a bummer to them. They're like, oh, this is what they call entheta. This is bad news. We don't like bad news. Scientologists are really fragile people, and we'll talk about that some other time. But
we will.
The rough and tough OTs that are gonna, nothing can strike them down. It's the opposite. They are incredibly fragile people, and there's no way that he's going to broadcast that kind of bad news, that kind of controversy into the homes of the people that are paying to keep the lights on at the studio.
Yeah, and can you imagine going out into the internet that Scientology is giving? That Scientology, the Church of, is giving Louis Farrakhan a platform.
Oh yeah.
for his
Because then he
lawsuit
couldn't
against
say-
the ADL.
Yeah,
Oh,
because then he couldn't
man.
say, but we're taking them in because they're now on a path to being better people. I mean, that's the only reason, only justification for him doing it.
Now
is-
we can
is-
see the operational limits where
Yes, exactly.
Scientology stops the Nation of Islam, saying you can go this far, but you can't go there.
Yeah,
We're not going to help
basically.
you.
Yeah.
You're on your own. So with that, Mitch Brisker, thank you for being on Surviving Scientology.
Well, thanks for
As always,
inviting
we
me, Jeffrey.
enjoy-
It's always a
Yeah.
pleasure. I mean, I would just go do this with you at a local bar. I mean, doing it on YouTube is just more fun.
Oh, it is. It is. And so
Yeah.
thank you so much for those who watch. And please like and subscribe Surviving Scientology. It really helps our algorithm. And Mitch Brisker's channel as well. And Mitch, what is your channel on YouTube?
Scientology, The Big Lie. It's kind of branded with my book. And don't forget to go see, take a shot at my book. I think you really enjoy it. I'm trying to get the message out. And Christmas is coming up. So
Yeah, we're picking up some new subscribers because I'm going to cover some new issues heading into 2024. There's some court cases, there's a criminal court case that's going to start hotting up. So please subscribe. And I'm going to start broadcasting on Surviving Scientology on this channel. It's an older platform. And thank you so much for watching. Jeffrey Augustine for Surviving Scientology. And we will see you next time.